Welcome, everyone, to District Dialogue, a podcast by the Community Foundation, focused on highlighting the voices shaping the future of education. Welcome, everyone, to District Dialogue, a podcast by the Community Foundation. This podcast is focused on highlighting visionary changemakers within the education and youth development space. District Dialogue is specifically focused on highlighting some of the behind-the-scenes successes and strategies within education to highlight, again, leaders making successful change within the space. Our goal today is to connect with visionary change makers so together we can future-proof education. Our guest today is Callie Beach. Callie is an educator and currently the director of CTE Career Technical Education for Pitt County Schools in North Carolina. And Callie, I'd love to just kick it off with a few questions, but first off, let me say welcome and say, how are you as well?
Hi, thank you for having me today. Doing pretty good. It's a good day to be in the office because it's so hot outside, so everything's going pretty good.
I love it. And glad to hear that as well. And just want to get a quick snapshot and understanding of, who you are and what really led you into education. So I'd love to hear a quick, background, if you don't mind, on, not only how long you've been an educator, but what were some of the reasons or, initial things that led you to getting into this space as well.
Right. So I actually did not have the plan to go into education. And then when my plan was to go into the military. And then when I was in high school, I took a agriculture class. I took horticulture and realized that I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being in that atmosphere. I really enjoyed being a part of the national FFA organization. And when I was getting near time to graduate, I was like, okay, what do I want to do? I know I want to do something in agriculture, but I don't know specifically what. And I realized that if I went into teaching, that I could still participate in quite a variety of things when it came to agriculture. I didn't have to focus on one area. And I also have always really liked to just share with people the things that are in my head and the facts that I know. So ended up I went to college, NC State, got my degree in agricultural education, and then and then I went into the field. And so while I was teaching, I really enjoyed it because it's very hands-on. There's a lot of and that's what all about CTE. It's not classroom based. And so while I was teaching, I had a lot of teachers who would come to me with questions or would kind of be I was kind of like the middleman between them and the director. And then I also realized as much as I enjoyed helping kids plan their careers going into ag, I wanted all kids to be able to figure out what it is that they wanted their career to be. So that when they were approaching graduation, they weren't fumbling around me I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I should be going to school or not. Do I need to go to school? And so I decided to step out of the classroom and move into a mid-level administration where I really worked more with the teachers. And then I decided, hey, my next steps, I want to be a director so that I can really help guide where I want a CTE program to go so that everybody's kind of on the same page about what are we offering to students when it comes to career learning, when it comes to work-based learning, what we're doing in the classroom. Are we making sure that what we do in the classroom aligns with industry? And I felt like I'd have a better voice and a better seat at the table by moving into the director position.
Got it. And that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad to see that, or just really learn about the intentionality as it relates to your goals and aspirations, but then also seeing the most effective way to really, accomplish and realize some of those as well. And so even maybe taking a snapshot back, you mentioned, FAA, and for those who don't know, that's Future Farmers for America, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to understand, was CTE always called what it is now, or what were some of the ways that this was introduced maybe in the past, and how has this space changed from your perspective?
So it actually used to be called vocational education. And that's why a lot of times the public doesn't realize these classes are still being offered, because most people associate vocation equals job. Career and technical education doesn't sound like, oh, these are classes that prepare a kid for a job. So, but they decided that there was a lot of stigma around the word vocation. So it was like there was a set group of students who they go to vocation, and there was a set group of students who they don't go into vocation. These are going to be the students that go to college. These are the kids that are going to be like CEOs, things like that. And so they decided, they're like, we really need to change the name so that people understand that career and technical education is for everybody. Because if the goal is for every student to be in a career at some point, there's lots of careers that there's different ways in which you can go into it. They may need to go to college. They may not. They may need an advanced degree. They might just be able to do an apprenticeship. And so there's a lot of changing to kind of have that. It's like, this is for everyone. There's not anybody that's too big for CTE, and there's not anybody that's too low for CTE. It is for everyone.
Yeah, I can relate as well. I'm from, in school regards where I went to school, I'm from a small town, Powder Springs, Georgia, Marietta, Georgia, where it's not uncommon to see cows or horses next to where you grow up or on your way to school. And so, at the younger age, you hear vocation and you still have to ask, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And they just reduce it down to, okay, trade school or trades. And then you say, well, I don't want to do that. Or to your point, a stigma can easily be created. And so, I definitely want to even maybe double click on that as well as it relates to, why do you think a stigma exists even still to this day around some of the, trade-based or CTE-based career paths? And where does that derive from?
I think a lot of it, unfortunately, derives from like how people are sometimes raised, beliefs or things like that, that there's always, it seems in our mind, there's always a hierarchy. Who's considered the hierarchy versus who's not? Versus in any type of job, everybody has a role. It doesn't matter if you are answering phones, if you're cashing checks, if you're signing paperwork, if you're the one keeping the place clean. Everybody has a role. But in our world, most people, though, they have to place those roles into some type of hierarchy. Who's above who and who's below who. And so, unfortunately, I think that is where there's still that stigma that there are certain jobs that are perceived as, oh, this job is below this. And so, or this job is dirty. This job is gross. So, oh, we don't want to do that. That's not for us. Versus, yeah, there are a lot of jobs out there that are gross, but those jobs also usually come with a much higher price tag because they are jobs that are needed. They are required in our world. And so that's what we're trying to change. And we've seen it a lot more with actually now like salaries being seen. That's like, man, people who are working in the blue collar field, they actually, that's a good salary that people are making. It's a major salary. And now it's like, maybe we don't need to think that people are too good to do this job as it was seen before.
I love that. And I was going to even ask, is that something that you see that still persists? I'll offer this bit of input as well. For me, the first kind of use case was HVAC, right? So, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And I am familiar with individuals and or welding who are doing well into the six figures, within those careers. So, as you make your own efforts within your school district, is that something that you see that still persists in relation to that stigma, or is it changing? Or love to get your feedback there as well.
We definitely still see it. We call it the GPA game. There's still a lot of families, and you see it a lot. It is kind of hard when families that have more education, typically they also want to see that education from their kids. And so it can be hard for them to want to step back and be like, no, you don't have to get a bachelor's degree. You don't have to do this. There's nothing like, it's great to go into the trades. Here's a great platform for you. And that's one of the things that we're really big into pushing with our work-based learning program is having that conversation with parents and getting them to understand that's like, if your student might not be interested in pursuing education because they like doing the things with their hands, they prefer to do the more skill set stuff than learning the theory behind it, and showing them like, hey, they will still make a great salary and will be able to last on their own. This is a sustainable job. And that's one of the things we see. But there are definitely times we still have parents that when a student wants to go into one of our pre-apprenticeships, that the parents we still have some that say no, that they are not interested. And one of the things we love about a pre-apprenticeship is the students have a job while they're in school, and then their schooling when they graduate is paid for by the company. And so that's a lot of where we center our conversation around with parents is it's like, okay, they can do this and they're still getting training. They're still going to get schooling or whatever. And now there's also no cost to you. This company's doing it and your kid they have a job when they graduate. Their job is secure. Their employment is secure.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of win-wins, and I'm definitely familiar with really, again, conveying the value to parents and educators as well as, again, Community Foundation. What we do is focus on using interest-based pathways to identify, careers and opportunities for our students and emerging professionals. And of course, nowadays, the interest point of choice is a lot that exists within the digital entertainment industry, right? And so think anything from gaming to animation, film, and production. These are spaces that, of course, come with their own stigma. Naturally, they're just seen as a space for entertainment, where individuals are entertained, rather. But we, have been able to, one, not only instruct, but progress the individuals towards careers in production, right? And so, a quick snapshot example there, and I love to get feedback if this is something that you've seen or if you're familiar with. We have individuals who have started an esports program for their school or at their school, which, focuses on, not only just gameplay, but all of the organizational management aspects that come with that, which, believe it or not, there's like 4 or 5 disciplines into one to, stand up a program like that, which includes, yes, community management and, event management, but then also broadcast production, IT, and honestly, graphic design and marketing all fall into that category as well. So definitely, I have, gotten familiar with how to, if you will, rebuttal or even combat some of those stigmas or just, perceptions that are seen. I love to get your feedback if that's something that you're familiar with or have actually seen as well in regards to more of the digital side of the technical skills that can be built or acquired, in some of these same or similar pathways.
Yeah. So right now, there's a group of us in the district that we started meeting last year to kind of plan out where we wanted to see esports go, because we knew this is a huge thing coming up, and happening. And so we want to make sure that we have outlets for our students. And so right now, I think we typically do it as an after school thing. And we're trying to figure out how to actually build it into the curriculum. But we do have we offer in the high school we do Adobe to do video design, graphic design, visual design. And the reason we're doing that is because we know there's a lot of kids that yes, we want to joke about influencers or whatever, but that is where people are interested in. And if they want to go into film production or editing, there's actually technical skills to it. It's not all just the theater arts. And so we've even started offering that at our, trying to offer it to middle school students so that they can get some of those basics before going to high school, so that in high school can even hone in more on the skill sets they need. We have a lot of the, even our coding stuff that we do, they base it around gameplay. And that's how they learn to code, is through doing stuff in a game. And so we see a lot more. I remember going through school and everything, everybody wanted to be oh, all my kid does is play video games. That's all they do. They need to get outside. They need to do that. But it's but there is a need for people to go into this industry as well. The gaming industry is a huge industry. And I know North Carolina has a huge gaming industry sector. And so there's a difference between, okay, Mike, being okay, all I do every day is play games and that's how I earn my income, versus, oh, I'm the one that builds, I design it. And in order to do that, I have to present a language to the computer. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. They don't know that backside to computer games. They just they just assume that it's just there, but they don't know all of the computer science privy stuff that people have to know in order for this to look like you're actually in the woods or in a castle and not look like the pixelated stuff from the 1980s.
Absolutely. Cal, you hit the nail on the head in regards to just I would say, background knowledge necessary to really add value to this space. That's really some of the, if you will, language that we always communicate. It's, of course, being able to pursue your interest actually increases your likelihood to be able to add value based on your current awareness of how these things already operate. Right. And so in that same regard, we, definitely love to connect the dots for not only our students, but stakeholders at large as it relates to what is the real viability of this. And, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the one piece that really got me started, I know in North Carolina, like you mentioned, there's a huge investment, even as far as the state level. But, the element that got us started was recognizing, the gaming industry itself is bigger than music and film combined from a revenue perspective.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. And it's the numbers change every year, but respectively, music's about $40 billion and film, $80-90 billion. And in regards to the box office, but annually at the global level, gaming is a 180, almost $200 billion industry. And so when you start to look at it from that perspective, you recognize, well, there's a number of opportunities that exist. But the other cool part is a lot of the skill sets are transferable. So I really want to hear and get your feedback if you all, really reference or use some of the same language or ideology around transferable skills within, your school district or even sometime or some point within your career itself.
Right. So, and that actually is one of the things that we try to work with all classes is like, okay, even because a student might start out in an area because they think they like it and then they realize they don't, but there might be a skill that they get from it, or it might not be the exact job they want to do in that field, but they can still get the basis. And so that's kind of one of the things that we use a lot with, we kind of hone it like with Adobe, that we're like, no, you may not do specifically with Illustrator or Photoshop there, because as we know, Adobe has thousands of platforms, but at least you can start getting those basic skill sets and test driving. Okay, I like this aspect and this aspect, don't like this aspect. So, okay, don't go into careers that fit that aspect. And that's one of the things we try to work with everybody. It's like, okay, some of the things that everybody needs in a job. We all know everybody needs social skills. They need to know how to critically think. They need to know how to be able to handle things that come at them, how to communicate with people. And so through all jobs, just even those basic ones. And so that's what I try to say. It's like, even if they don't like this, every class should be teaching a kid how to critically think. So if game art design is what they want to go into, if robotics is what they want to go into, if STEM, those are all key components that they're getting. And so we do have, like, at one of our typical middle school classes, like there's STEM classes and we also have high school. But the basis for that is every single one of those classes teaches you like these fundamentals, how to critically think. You're given a problem. Let's work through the problem. And I know like one of them is they have to deal stuff with roller coasters. Yeah, the kid that might not be their job interest. They may not want to build roller coasters, but now it can be like, hey, I remember I had to think through, how do I design this, the elements of design, all of that stuff. And so making sure that our teachers connect those concepts with other parts of the world. Not that, oh, the kid thinks we're just building a roller coaster. Nope, there's more to it than just that.
I love that. And I'd love to just focus in a bit on you all's approach to make sure not only that process happens, but as individuals, start to acquire skills or become acquainted with different skill sets themselves, they see the pathway of how this connects to, like you mentioned, various jobs or career opportunities. And so I'm sure that happens both at the, classroom level and of course at the leadership level. So I'd love for you to elaborate, if you will, on, what was the process maybe as you stepped into your role, and what different elements have you introduced to make sure that, again, that connection between, what we're learning in class and then what the careers this may connect to, is made clear to the end user and even the educator.
So one of the things that we've been working on is that connection piece. So we talk about these things in class and you might share how it relates to the real world. But the one thing I always tell everybody is the best person to hear about a career from is someone doing it. So it's like, that's one of our goals is how do you get your student to be able to talk specifically with people who are doing these jobs? Luckily, like right here in Greenville, we have Grover Gaming. So that connects them. But like we do guest speakers, we do lots of like the career fairs. we have a district-wide thing that it's called Grow Local, where businesses volunteer for students to come and take tours of them. And they're matched up with the class that relates. We also use a platform called Pathful, where a teacher can go in and specifically request, I want a person that's doing this exact job. You can request what age they are, what gender they are, now, like anything you want to know, you request it. And this company goes and finds them. And then we'll set up a time that they will video in, and you have like a session. Like they'll either take you on a tour of what they do, or they'll have like a really cool, like engaging presentation. It's not them just sitting there answering questions, but like they talk to you about what their job is. And one of the things I've learned in the past few years is it used to be like, as an adult who's been working, you know the questions you need to be asking. What's your retirement like? What are your benefits like? But that's not, in today's society, kids are like, how does this job fit the lifestyle that I want? And so that's one of the things that I'm big on. I'm like, have the people discuss that with your kids. What is their typical day to day? Are they 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? Are they shift work? And what do they like about each parts of it? Because I think so many kids, they're used to just whatever they see is all they get and don't realize all the different areas. And so one of our biggest goals is, with that is also, instead of focusing just on your typical job, what are some of those minute jobs or the niche markets as well, that it's like, hey, this is something else you can do within this field. Maybe you don't want to do this area, but here's all these other jobs that relate to that you might be interested in doing. It's really, that's been my goal since I've been here. So I'm starting my 3rd year in the district. And so that's been my big push, is making sure that industry partners, business partners, companies are getting in front of these students to have these conversations.
I love that. And I took a note in regards to that group. I love the fact that it gets nuanced to say, what do you want to see? And that's something that I usually, ask to our students when I was still leading some of our programs, but then also I advocate for our educators and facilitators to do the same. Is maybe sometimes it's easier to start with, hey, what do you not want to do? Yeah. Right. Going back to aligning with their lifestyle that they want to live. Because if you ask the broad question, what do you want to be, or who do you want to be when you get older, you get the blank stare or the deer in the headlights type of look. But I think it's a lot easier to say, what do you not want to do? Some people start off with, I don't want to work in a cubicle. Mm-hmm. Or I don't want a dress code. Okay, great. Now we can work backwards to identify what may align. And so maybe even with that same type of, approach in mind, I love to hear what are some of the, gaps or just areas for opportunity, even if it's not just within Pitt County, but, abroad as it relates to, the CTE space, or even connecting, curriculum to careers. What are some of the gaps that you see that exist that, you'd love to be able to solve for?
One of the biggest gaps we see is just the timeline of how quickly the industry is changing and updating, but how unfortunately the curriculum can't change as fast because there's a process that the curriculum has to go through. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, like, teachers might be teaching the curriculum and then trying to supplement or add on what they know what's going on in the industry. And so, like, that's one of the things. AI has been around for a while now, and we're getting way more and more into AI, but we don't actually have any set curriculum yet to teach kids about AI, or even like, hey, if you want to get a job in this sector using, or how do you use AI to do some of the jobs that are out there? And so that is usually our biggest thing. Like, so we have a business advisory group that we meet with, and they'll give suggestions on what they'd like to see in the classroom. And that's sometimes the hard part, is like, okay, so either like, if we don't have a curriculum yet, we can write a curriculum, but then that's also a process of going through. And then by the time you write it, are you going to have to make changes? So luckily, I do know, like, in the state of North Carolina, and I think all states, they are figuring out, okay, we've got to be better and figure out how to update our curriculum on a more, not fast-paced basis, but like it used to be, you might go, your curriculum was 5 years old. And now they're like, okay, we need to really be reusing this, or like re-looking at it more often. And so That's typically where we see. So that's where, because like, of course, we don't want to put people out into the field and they don't know how to do what's being asked of them now. But we also, one of our big things when we work with like our industry partners, when we have internships, apprenticeships, or anything like that, is we're like, hey, you got to remember, this is a student. They're not a 20-something-year-old or a 30-something-year-old. And they may have learned some different things in the classroom than what you might do. Because we all know there's a lot of job sites, or not job sites, but they have different ways of doing things versus, of course, the curriculum is going to be straight by the book. Everything is all T's are crossed, I's are dotted. And it's like, you got to keep that in mind. Like, so when you're working with these students, like, be patient with them. Understand like that they are coming from the classroom, and then, but show them, okay, how can you take what they learned, the basics in the classroom, and then apply it to now. So you can't expect them to come out of high school at Dean like they've been building cars or fixing cars for 15 years.
Yeah, it just doesn't match. And I totally get that as well. A lot of our, really all of our modern programming was built by our director of education, who herself is a former educator. And she always shares, we're building this with the educator in mind. And so some of those key pieces are, not only how is this going to be, instructed or engaged by someone who's not as familiar with the space, but then also how do you stay up to date with the nuanced changes that take place on a regular basis? Mm-hmm. And so I definitely understand and can relate. And then you mentioned the buzzword, right? AI, which is, the great, I would say great infamous change to everyone's world. And so that's definitely another piece where right now we're seeing, different, opinions and different, maybe, if you will, levels of comfort as it relates to how education is engaging with AI. Love to get your feedback and snapshot of what Pitt County is doing, and maybe even your personal perspective on how you feel about AI as an educator.
So, I love AI. I think it's great. It's just, it is going to be that shift on how to use it so that students don't have to spend their time doing busy work. And now they can get that information from AI and then how to use that. It's the same when technology is always changing in the world. And so now everybody's worried that machines are taking over all this stuff. And it's they're going to take away certain jobs, but now it's going to create more jobs that we have to prepare for. So it's the same thing with AI. AI is going to replace certain things that we don't no longer need to do. Like one day I put in here I needed to figure out a number and I could not figure out how to write the formula for it. So I put in AI and it created the math formula for me. And I'm like, great, awesome. Yeah. Versus me sitting here for 15 minutes being like, I should know this. I got to figure it out. And I think that's what there's still people are like, oh, kids need to be looking in books or they need to be researching everything on Google. And I'm like, but don't waste that time. Instead, teach them how to use AI effectively so they get the information they need, and now they can get onto the project. Now they can get to, okay, how do you create a discussion around this? How do you, stuff like that. That to me is where the shift has to go versus not looking at it as it's cheating. It's making kids, because there's so many things that we do as adults in our everyday jobs that was considered cheating in school. But I'm like, no one adds in their head. No one has everything memorized about their job. We can look it up. And using AI to take away the busy work part so that you can get into those higher level thinking levels.
I totally agree. And to your point, I think one thing we were always told is, you're not going to be able to look things up in the future. You need to have it memorized. And it's the exact opposite. People want you to memorize everything. It's like there's a lot of reference material. Make sure you're using that before you just submit it as, fact or as, a clarified statement. And definitely agree. And so you mentioned a few things, and I would say 2 for 2, Callie, as it relates to just the approach and the mindset. I love the approach. And I would say, everyone look out for Pitt County to be, leaders in the space. Because to that point, I have a peer who's maybe 10 years my senior, and he was sharing when he went through school, he was told, hey, get into the DVD industry. That space is going to be the new thing. So he went to, school for applied sciences, got a job before he got out of school, got his PhD. And by the time he was finishing that PhD, he said it was 2008 and the iPhone came out, and it totally took our entire sectors off the board, the VHS, Blockbuster. And so in that same regard, it's about, I think it's very important to make sure that we're not only, preparing for the now, and AI is here now, but then also the future. Mm-hmm. They said in the last 10 years, the 25, and this is a fact, and I'll have to, source it in a little bit, but in the last 10 years, 25% of the skills needed to get into the tech space or technical space have changed. However, over the next 5 years, 75% of the skills needed to get into the space will change as well. And so that may be a scary statistic to face, but we all have to just, recognize that as a truth and reality. And so I'd love to get your approach on how you're ensuring, and you kind of hinted at it before, that, students aren't just preparing for one type of role or one specific, segment of the industry, but they're staying adaptable and able to, again, change with the times. I'd love to get your feedback on how you all are approaching that.
So that's where, like, one of the things that we do as like a district is that each individual group meets monthly, twice a month sometimes, and like they talk to each other, they update each other. So like sometimes someone might have heard of something going on and they can share it with the rest of the group. We also do, like, I'm very big on professional development and people going to professional development related to what they're teaching so that they can stay up to date on what's going on in their area, because it is different. When you're in the classroom, you have your curriculum, you have things to see. So like you're kind of teaching the same thing over and over again when you're no longer in the industry. And so it can be easy to kind of get away from that and not always know. I mean, unless you get like a daily thing on your email or what, let me tell you the top 5 things in computer science this week or agriculture this week. But there's a lot of things still going on, and companies putting on professional development, groups putting on things to be like, hey, let's learn more about this topic so that you feel more comfortable teaching it. And that's one of the things that education, a lot of times professional development just focuses on how to be a better teacher, data wise. But in CTE, it's twofold. We gotta continue to grow as a teacher classroom wise, but you also have to continue to grow in that industry that you're representing. And so you've got to be able to do both and keep up to date on both and attend things on both.
I love it. And I would say, just to kind of shift a little bit, I want to maybe, point some time and attention to other educators. So if you don't mind kind of sharing these next few responses with the mindset of, hey, I want to talk directly to my peers and give them some of, advice or, the perspective that you have. But, what are some of the things that you find as, some of the most effective ways to both galvanize senior leadership as well as, the individual educators? And, what are some of those ways that you'd want, to be amplified? Where are some of those items, if you don't mind?
So with senior leadership, it's more about like making sure that CTE is at the table, that we have a voice, and that these courses are seen. And I know that they are. That's like, they are electives, but they are necessary classes. They're necessary things to get for students to be preparing to go into a career. Math, English, science, history, all of those just as important. And so is career. Like, we use the math you learn in here, we're using it here, and like back and forth. And so getting people to see like the value of career and technical education so that, again, people feel confident having their students sign up for it, so that it's not about the GPA game. But then that's also like even higher from that, that's people play the GPA game because of the different requirements of colleges. And so, that's one of the things that like we try to look at, and the conversations we try to have with students. It's like, yes, it does look great to have all these honors courses, which means we offer honors, we offer AP. But if all your schedule is just core classes and no career, how is it that you're really tapping into what it is that you want to do?
Yeah.
and then and that's one of the reasons, like we talk about with our teachers, it's like making sure that our curriculum is at a high standard and we have high expectations for our students so that we are beating that stigma that we're here for a certain type of student when that's not the case.
Love that. And I would say with the same, mindset in mind regards to communicating directly to other educators, what are some of the ways, or I would say even what's the role that, to your point, the community and, families play in student success, and what would you advocate to make sure we can consistently, see, or what we would want to just make sure we advocate ourselves? What would you say is some of those things?
One of the biggest things, and I was actually, one of my friends and I were talking about this yesterday, was having more, like, the community play more of a role in the classroom. Like, we do know there's certain spaces that are like, oh yeah, come do field trips here. Come do that. Great. But at the same time, are there things you can come do with our students? Are there projects that you can come do with them and get them, like, bring to them an issue you're having in your company or in your job and have them brainstorming it? Like, one of the things we talk about is, instead of doing activities in the classroom that not are fake, but are like prepare a student, but can you do those same activities, but actually connect them with a business or somebody in the real world, so that the simulation is a little bit more high stakes. They have to communicate with someone. They have to come up with a proposal. They have to think about a budget, versus they do it just on their own. And they get some experience, but they might be missing some of those key components that they would have to do out in the real world. And so that's one of our things that's like, however community members can be more forthcoming. It's like, hey, I would love to get into the classroom. I would love to come talk to your students. I would love to do X, Y, Z in some way, shape, or form. Because sometimes, like, it does start to get boggled down. It's like you're contacting all these different people to be like, would you be interested? Do you want to do this? It would also be helpful if people reached out to their CTE departments, or most districts have career development coordinators, and said, hey, I work for this company. I'd love to come in. Could you put me in contact with a teacher that relates to this area? And that's where we're seeing more of our connection. When people reach out and we immediately connect them to the teachers in that field. It's like, hey, y'all start working together. So that way it kind of cuts out all the middlemen, and then things get lost in the weeds. That's like, bam, here's how I can support you. And the teacher's like, great, this is what I would like you to do.
Love that. And you've now said that twice. So I would definitely want to, reiterate that for the audience as well. We need to connect our communities to the classroom.
Yeah.
Definitely what it sounds like. I love that. And, maybe even shifting, from talking directly to our educators and to the community, to our families, to our parents. I'd love to hear maybe, some of the things that, again, you would still really want to advocate or amplify as it relates to ways to be successful. I know we started off the conversation with just maybe removing stigmas from, the whole CTE element as it relates to careers and trades that are really meaningful to society, but then also an individual's, happiness and, I would say just lifestyle. And so maybe one or two blank slate, open slotted, elements that you would want to communicate directly to families and or members of the community.
The biggest thing I want to say to families is, don't cross off CTE immediately, or CTE classes. Even, I get it. If you want students to have like more of the math science, that is great. There's nothing wrong with it. But at least have your students complete a pathway in CTE that's relevant to what they're interested in or what they think they're interested in. Because like you said earlier, they could decide, oh, this is not for me. And that's just as useful. Most of the time, CTE courses, they complete 2 classes to be done with a certain area, and then they can take more. But that would be my thing with families is like, no matter what, just have your kid take one area that that they think they might be interested in CTE, and just see what their thoughts are. And then, but like, don't count it out because it's not a college class. It's not an AP class. Getting those students to be well-rounded. My other thing is, like I said earlier, is really just, our goal, and I know that the goal for CTE is really just getting it out in the community. Like, we are here. There, you hear it all the time. Man, I wish I had been taught that in school, or they needed this in school. And it's like, they are being taught that in school. It might be specific to a class. Like, not everybody wants to learn how to change the oil in their car. Not everybody wants to learn how to run a spreadsheet. Not everybody wants to learn how to balance tax or anything like that. Yeah. There are kids that do, and those skills are there. And then and that's one of the things we kind of talk about. Like, middle school is where we use it. Like, kids get to experience a lot of variety of careers in middle school, but then high school is really where we want them to hone in. Mm-hmm. But just trying to get them, the public, to see that it's there. It's in your schools. Your kids are being taught these things. It's just not that there's one class that teaches, hey, I'm going to teach you how to be an adult. There's a bunch of classes that are like, I'm going to teach you how to be an adult related to this career because this is the field that you said you're interested in.
Love that. And yeah, thank you for just that feedback and real-time input. And I love to, conceptualize this a bit for the audience as well. Could you share a few, real-time examples of a student or students that you directly engaged with, or maybe are in charge of it within your district, that have been able to progress from, different CTE courses to careers that they find to be aligned with their ultimate lifestyle goals?
Yeah. So we, through our pre-apprenticeship program, we actually had 2 students this year that worked for a welding company called North State Steel. And they actually are, the Pitt Community College is building a new welding building. Those 2 students are a part of building that welding building. So, yeah, like a full circle moment. And then, there's a lot of stories of our students who they pursued an area and then went into the field. There's a student right now. They just graduated. They're really big in agriculture. They want to become an agricultural teacher. They actually presented to the directors at the opening meeting that we had last week for conference. While he's going to school here, before he goes off to his 4-year, he's actually going to be doing stuff in the middle school as basically kind of like a student intern, just to keep giving him experience. He did an internship during the school year where he worked doing for credit, teaching kids already. But we have a lot of students who and that's why we're really big in trying to put kids through a work-based learning platform, because that's where we're seeing so much success of students being like, hey, I got a job with this company and I'm really enjoying it and I want to stay with this company.
I love that. And really just thinking as you said that out loud, I wanted to make sure we're, speaking towards a larger use case, but then I know some school districts and some regions have, different nuances and challenges. And so I would love to get your not only feedback, but advice for, a larger school district, whether it's in a rural area or maybe a little bit larger of a district as it relates to something that might be in a major city or a metropolitan area. What are the ways that you share first, maybe the differences between those two, but what are ways that could be successful no matter, which demographic you may come from?
Right. And that's what's great. So before I came here, I was in the smallest district in North Carolina. And so, it's very rural. There's no grocery store in the entire county. The entire school district was less than 100 kids, and that was a public school system. And so having to build up that community base to get students work experience and all of that, and then moving to Pitt County where some of that that was already being done, and then how to continue doing that. And then now even larger districts that they're able to put we're still small in the sense that usually a company will pick up maybe 1 to 2 students a year, but some of these larger districts, they're oh, we can pick up 5 to 10 students a year. And so really I know I'm blessed to be in this county where it's so easy. The traveling time isn't as hard. But in those smaller districts, it's really, that is where you have to tap into your industry people. And because they're there and it's going to be easier to get them to the students sometimes than the students always to them. But there's lots of different ways to be able to do work-based learning, job shadowings, apprenticeships or pre-apprenticeships, things like that. And so you really just kind of have to think outside the box. Like how can I get a student to do this? How can I talk to a company about it to get them on board with being like, hey, I want you to bring in a high school student. But so really it's all about the connections that you make and the conversation that you have with people. One of the things that we've started doing is we refer to our students when we're talking about industry as this is your future workforce, because you do still see a lot. They're like, oh, well, we can't hire them right now. Well, they're still in school. So maybe we're not ready to talk to them yet. It's like, but this is your future workforce. So if you don't start talking to them now and getting them thinking about your company now, then when they're a senior and they're deciding what they want to do, that might be too late. They've already talked to somebody else that's already hooked them. And so that really is, I mean, that it has to be, you have to bring your industry people to the table. They have to be there meeting and talking with your students and your teachers.
I love that. And I'll, as we conclude, I normally would ask, what does success look like? What I've gotten a chance to kind of listen and learn. And so I would articulate maybe back to you and you let me know if there's any gaps or just other areas that you want to offer. Of course, from a leadership and just a larger school district or a system perspective, making sure that you're connecting the core learning areas from math, science, English, social studies to the CTE, department or, offices as well with a cross-curricular type program or learning itself. Also heard you mention again, making sure that the community is integrated into classrooms as it relates to anything from a career day and or more of a, structured mentorship, pre-apprenticeship type program as well. Of course, for our families, even being able to remove the stigmas and then also, be willing to explore what some of these different classes and or fuller programs look like, as they may be, again, not the full thing that leads you into your career, but offer, really transferable skills as well. And so maybe if I missed anything, let me know. I'd love to, get your feedback if, that's what success looks like for you, or if there's other areas that you would add to that as well.
No, I mean, I think that really entails what we're trying to do. And it's like overall, like we think that we feel successful in these areas, but we know there's always ways to improve. There's always ways that we can reach out more to families so that they understand like what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're trying to do with CTE, reaching out to businesses. But it is one of the things, like both people have to come together versus one person trying to do all the reaching out. That's what allows us to like be a better team. It's just, and that's like our big goal is how do we spread the word of what we're doing in CTE in Pitt County so that it will allow business and industry and families and stuff to be like, hey, I want my kid to be a part of this. Like, I want my kid to be written about in the local paper or posted on the social media site because like, oh, this is super cool that they're doing.
I love that. And I'm glad to, hear that we're aligned in that regard, because I feel like a holistic approach is the only way to really accomplish a larger goal, especially cumbersome goals, if you will. And that makes sense. And before we conclude, I wanted to ask a few fun questions. Of course, with our organization being focused on gaming and different entertainment spaces, I definitely want to make sure we're having a little bit of fun today as well. So if you don't mind kind of imagining yourself back in the middle school, maybe high school days, like you said, it's, right now in North Carolina, it's hot outside. What are some of the things that you would do? What games are you playing? What are you doing to have fun in this type of maybe summer going back to school timeframe?
So when I was younger, I mean, I was at camp a lot. I loved to be at a camp. I just wanted to be, that's where I always wanted to be. I was very more outdoors, but my brother was the one that would play video games. So I always wanted to play if he would allow me to play on his team. Anything that he wanted that we had to play against each other, I did not want to play because I knew I would lose. But in high school, like we would actually have people come over. We'd put a TV behind the couch and have another TV, and we'd play Halo against each other, but people, so that you couldn't see where the other ones were. So we did that a lot. And then, but the games I'm always interested in are like, I love Guitar Hero, stuff like that, like those type of fun games because I just felt like I was better at them than having to go around and like be strategic, anything like that. Sports games were never my thing. I can't do a sports game to save my life.
No worries. You mentioned Halo. That's a childhood favorite. Definitely agree. And same in regards to sometimes I like to play the game where I'm building a farm versus trying to save the world, right? So that's strategy and a little bit more just the things I want to tinker with. And in that same regard, one more fun question for you. If you could have a superpower to save the world, what would it be and what would you do?
Oh, man. If I had a superpower, I don't. Sometimes I wish I had the power to like read minds, but then sometimes I don't. I think I just want the ability to move things. Like I want to be able to control things and move them around.
I love that. Professor X.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, first, again, let me say again, Callie, thank you for the time. This has been, very lovely and just a huge learning opportunity for me and hopefully our audience as well. Definitely look forward to hearing more around your successes. And I would say your current superpower, you're definitely exercising that on a daily basis as it relates to, again, educating and moving the collective of us forward as well. So thank you for your time and I hope you have a great rest of your summer.
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys letting me come on here and chat and just share what I have to say about CTE.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a great week. Thanks for listening. For more stories, updates, and behind-the-scenes content, follow Community on LinkedIn and YouTube. Have a guest idea or topic you want us to explore? We'd love to hear from you. To learn more, visit communityfoundation.org.